Hey everyone, welcome to Intro to DJing, and in this first video what I want to do is talk about what it is you need to be able to DJ. So let's go ahead and get started. You're of course going to need a laptop to be able to play your music, a DJ controller plus some DJ software, which is what we're going to be using, and I'll talk about some DJ controllers and the differences between them in the next video. And some of these can be really cheap. You can spend less than $100, and some are more than $1,500 for the hardware itself. Now, there are also all-in-one type of DJ controllers or even players where you won't even need a laptop or software. It's just its own unit, but these tend to be pretty pricey. So examples for these are like the Denon Prime 4 or the Prime 2, the Pioneer XDJ, or the new Opus. So these are all examples of these sort of all-in-one systems. You can also have, for instance, CDJs and a DJM as a mixer. That's its own standalone system too. But because these can be expensive and because this is an introduction class, and I'm assuming you already have a laptop, the most economical way to go forward is by getting a DJ controller plus some software. And lastly, what's really important is you're going to need some pair of headphones. Now, you likely already have headphones. The ones that I use and that I really recommend are the V-Moda M100s. They're only going to set you back about $250, but they will last you a very long time. I have multiple pairs of these. In fact, one of them actually broke, but I had been using it for like 6 years, so I'm not even mad about it. They're excellent quality headphones and what I would recommend. They're not sponsoring me and paying me or anything. If they do, I'll let you know. It'd be great, but yeah, that's what it is that you need. Now, most of the time where you're going to get started selecting your software and your hardware, which can be really overwhelming at first, tends to be what your ecosystem is going to be. Serato is an ecosystem that's now owned by Pioneer. Pioneer recently bought Serato, and this is used actually by a lot of hip-hop DJs, and it's really designed, or at least traditionally, around the vinyl type of experience. So Serato doesn't have a bunch of bells and whistles. It's designed to be very tactile and intuitive, very quick. Once again, take these as just general guidelines. You know, there are plenty of club DJs or festivals DJs who like Serato and use Serato, but this is just kind of the general stereotypes or the general categories and the focus of these softwares. You also have Rekordbox by Pioneer. Now, Pioneer originally was, marred with Rekordbox, but now since they own Serato, they do both. And this is used by a lot of EDM DJs, and the reason for this is Rekordbox is also used and was originally not a DJ application, but was a music preparation program for preparing your music to be playing on CDJs or XDJs. So when you're playing on CDJs, all you do is you bring a USB stick formatted with your music from Rekordbox, you plug it into the player, and that's all you need. So all you need to bring to DJ at a festival or a club is really a USB stick, hopefully multiple, you have backups, and you plug it into the players and play from those. Then you have Traktor by Native Instruments, which is what I use, although unfortunately Traktor is hard to recommend now because they haven't been keeping up with a lot of the updates, although I think they're getting back to it. They just recently announced a new controller, which is really exciting, but I do love it. It's been very stable for me, and for me, I got started with music production first, so Traktor, being familiar with Native Instruments was a big plus for me, and it's very popular with kind of European techno DJs. They attempt to sometimes blur the line between music production and DJing, which I think is really cool. So I'm a big fan of Traktor, but if you're just getting started, it's hard to recommend in favor of Serato, Rekordbox, or Virtual DJ by Atomix. This is used by a lot of wedding DJs, and Virtual DJ is a good balance of features, of performance. It has a lot of customizability. It may be a little overwhelming at first. Serato's a little bit more straightforward, but Virtual DJ, I would say, in general, is a little bit more customizable. There are a lot of cool things you can do with it. This is what I recommend if you have no idea or preference, because it is a free download. You can use it without needing a controller as well. There are other options. There's a program called DJay, that's compatible with iPhones, iPads, Mac, and Windows. That's a great program as well. Virtual DJ and the DJay program, they don't really make their own controllers for their ecosystem, so they're pretty much compatible with all of these other controllers, whereas if you're using Serato, Rekordbox, or Traktor, chances are you're going to get a controller that's specifically compatible with those. And here's an example of these four programs. Notice how they look pretty similar if you kind of look at them. You have two decks on the left and right, which correspond to two tracks, and you generally have your browser on the bottom, which is where you basically find the songs that you would queue up to one deck or the other, and then you have some form of your waveforms. Most of these will support parallel waveforms, so Traktor does now, but that in this picture it doesn't, but you can kind of see, that they're pretty similar, and the reason I say this is because getting started on one, it's not going to be impossible to switch to another. It's not like you're locked in. I have used every single one of these. I have performed on every single one of these, and I am very comfortable and fine doing it. I, of course, have my preferences. There are, pros and cons to each, but it really comes down to what software, what ecosystem you want, and we'll talk more about that when selecting a controller. So my recommendation is try a few and see if there's one you like the most. Alternatively, if there's a controller you want, get that. It'll likely come with the software and use the software. If you like the layout of the controller or you want to try out a few controllers, you can often go to Guitar Center and just try them out. And that'll give you a feel for whether or not you like the controller and the connection between hardware and software. And as I said, really, they're pretty similar. There are great DJs that use each of these, so it really comes down to your own personal preference on which you like the most. I don't think you should pick one of these programs because some other DJ told you to, unless there's a specific goal you have in mind. For instance, if your goal is really eventually down the line to be a festival type of DJ, then I would try to encourage you to look into Rekordbox because you're already going to be familiar with the ecosystem. All your cue points are going to be saved, these sorts of things. So it'll be a natural move. Whereas if your goal is, hey, I want to eventually play on vinyl, then Traktor or Serato are going to be the areas that I point you to. Or I really want a battle style setup. Well, Serato is really the only one that has the really nice battle style mixers like the DJM S9 or the S11. And of course, if you have a mobile device, check out DJ, which basically allows you to practice on your phone. This is what I used when I got started like 14 years ago. So that's a lot of fun. It'll give you a chance to do this. And of course, when you're getting this hardware, the integration between hardware and software is the most important part. You don't want to be getting started, buying a controller, and then having to do all this complicated MIDI mapping for it to work. You want it to be plug and play. And for the most part, all the controllers that I'm going to recommend in the next video are completely plug and play, and they're remarkably similar. So other things you're going to need to get started DJing once you have a controller and software picked out. You're of course going to need music, and most of the time actual music files. You don't want to be relying on streaming services, especially in a packed club with thousands of people. The club Wi-Fi is just a bandwidth problem, really. Everyone's trying to access the 2.4 or 5 gigahertz spectrum. You want to make sure you have those files. And honestly, in my experience, MP3 is fine. There are usually enough other issues in the signal chain that make the lossless wave not worth it, because the waves tend to be about 8 times larger on average, I would say, than maybe 5 to 8 times larger than MP3. If I am playing at a really nice sound system and I'm doing my own music and like a producer set, yeah, I am going to use waves, but for most of my open format stuff, MP3 is plenty fine, especially if it's 320 kilobits per second. The other thing you're going to need, and we'll talk about this later in the later half of the course, is a way for people to discover and contact you. People aren't just going to magically show up in your DMs, and they're certainly not going to be able to show up in your DMs if you don't have an Instagram or some way for people to contact you. It could be a website, and I use Bandzoogle to kind of organize my different DJ profiles, Instagram, TikTok, just some way of getting your name out there so people can discover you. And then time and space to practice. I used to actually practice on my dorm bed. I would set up my DJ controller on the dorm bed and I would stand, and it was actually the right height. And I had this application that would loop the audio from the RCA output back into my computer, so I would use my computer speakers and can still use headphone cues. So lots of ways you can do this, but you just need the time and the space to practice, get good. This isn't something that's going to happen overnight. It just takes time and experience. So thanks for watching. In the next video, we'll talk about beginner DJ controllers and the differences between them and what I recommend. See you then.